The following is an original production of AZPM News.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McElmore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, the hosts of NPR's Tiny Desk concert series are here to talk about their new contest. A talk with the filmmaker behind the documentary The Return of Navajo Boy. Hear from some members of the Tucson Gem and Mineral Society, and meet two of the artists behind Arizona Theater Company's current show, Ain't Misbehavin. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. Many people with desk jobs dream of being full-time musicians. Ironically, since 2008, NPR has been offering some of the best musicians in the world the chance to perform in an office. Now the hosts of the Tiny Desk concerts, that's Anna Maria Sayer and Robin Hilton, join me to talk about their annual contest to find an unknown artist to perform at NPR Music Headquarters. I started by asking each of them what the very first concert they attended was. Mine was Men at Work in 1982.
My first concert was Tommy Two-Tone. Do you remember Tommy Two-Tone?
8675.
8675309. The opening act for America. Yeah, that was my first one. It was like at the Kansas State Fair back in the early 80s.
I was about to ask, Robin, I'm surprised you could remember all the way back to the 1500s.
Thanks.
That's impressive.
Ouch. Shots fired.
Thanks. I had to lunch it anyways, even though he gave us the years.
But now I'm dying to know what Anna Maria is like.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Oh my goodness, you guys, I don't know. My first concert that I really took myself to, there was a local radio station that did this annual festival called Weenie Roast. So Weenie Roast was my first.
That's pretty vague, Anna Maria. Your most
you know
recent
what?
concert?
I have a really bad memory, so.
I'll vouch for that.
Were either of you witness to a Tiny Desk concert recently that you can recall?
Oh, I mean, we have shoot several a week, so yeah.
All the time.
I don't even know where I would begin with that. I brought in David Byrne and Robert Plant for two separate ones last fall that were both really memorable. Those are already up. Gosh, I wouldn't even know where to begin. So many.
Did you ever anticipate that you two would be involved with one of the hottest venues in the country?
No. Me and Robin are not that cool. Don't give us extra cool points because of the job. And I'm like, no, you have to understand.
And then they meet us and they're like, oh, God.
They're confused.
Yeah, very confused. The whole idea came from a group of friends just joking around with each other at work and just started doing it for fun. We never expected it to grow into the thing that it has become. And, real credit to NPR. I just don't think this could happen anywhere else because never at any point along the way did the suits at NPR say, all right, how are we going to monetize this? Or where are we going with this? What are the metrics telling us? They just let us have fun and do this fun, creative thing that celebrated music and artists. And, I think we were doing it we'd maybe been doing it for 5 years before it really blew up and became what it is now.
There are certainly listeners who are going to be maybe concerned about the future of NPR and also the future of the Tiny Desk. Any words on that?
We're not planning on going anywhere.
The desk stays.
The desk does stay.
It's bolted with concrete and whatever else, permanent.
This is the 12th year for the Tiny Desk contest. And so I wonder how you have evolved and what you're looking for. And if you could tell our listeners what you were looking for.
Something we've never heard before.
Yeah, we want to be surprised. That's for sure. And when we say something we haven't heard before, that doesn't necessarily mean oh, well, I'm a singer-songwriter with a guitar. I guess they probably hear a lot of singer-songwriters with guitars. I guess I shouldn't bother to. And we just mean be yourself and be true to who you are and be the singular voice that you already are. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't try to be something else. Don't try to... I wouldn't even focus on trying to win the contest. just focus on your music and why you do what you do in the first place, and do it because you love it, and do it for the experience of entering. We're going to see it. If you enter the contest, it will be watched and heard. And sometimes you don't even have to win the I've found a lot of artists through this contest who didn't win or didn't go on to play the Tiny Desk, but who I really fell in love with and I've been following ever since. So that in and of itself is a good thing.
I couldn't speak any more eloquently than my colleague Robin. No, exactly that. I mean, the thing that makes you something I've never heard before is that I've never met you. So I think that that is really key to just present the most you thing. And that is enough because that in and of itself will feel unique to me, unique to Robin, unique to all the folks who are watching these videos. So it doesn't mean that the most spectacular, over the top, bigger is better. The biggest and best you could be is being yourself. Sounds cliche, but it's real.
That was Robin Hilton and Anna Maria Sayre from NPR's Tiny Desk Concerts. The contest is open now. There's a link for all the information on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. A documentary about how uranium mining in Monument Valley has impacted the lives of many Native American families is screening in Tucson on February 15th. Here is Sarah Ariano with an interview.
Documentary director Jeff Spitz was able to speak with me about his film, The Return of Navajo Boy. It follows a Native American family on a journey of discovery to finding their once-thought lost little brother, while also touching on the environmental effects of the unrestricted uranium mining in the Monument Valley that the Navajo people must live with.
I didn't have a story when we started. All I had was an old film, and I wanted to find out who are the people in this, and particularly who is the young girl who looks up at the camera and smiles. What would she say if she could see this film, and if she would be willing to talk to me? What would she tell me about the making of this old film called Navajo Boy? I didn't speak Navajo. I didn't know anybody in Navajo Nation. I was a complete stranger and coming at this totally naive. So, I did some homework. I did some studying, and it still didn't really help. And when I wound up meeting Elsie Begay, I just couldn't believe how kind, pleasant, enjoyable, down-to-earth, generous she was to share more than just what it was like to make that film called Navajo Boy. In fact, she said she didn't remember. And that really blew my mind. If someone came to film me when I was a kid, I would remember it. But she said they were filmed all the time.
Even 11 years after the film originally released, you added a 15-minute epilogue, if I'm correct?
Yes.
What was the decision behind adding that and giving more context to some of the stories that we were introduced to in the film?
The epilogue, like the story itself, came about of necessity and not preconception. When we finished the film and premiered it at Sundance, it was a cliffhanger ending. So we intended to get a reaction with this film. The cliffhanger obligated me. I wanted to see if I could make a difference with the family in the film. They needed the difference to be made. I felt like we had created a tool together, and now I needed to use that tool to leverage attention and results of some kind. And I started throwing everything I filmed after the end credits into a box labeled sequel, because that was the language that seemed appropriate at the time. Social media, YouTube, and the 24/7 access to internet changed the whole ecosystem of communications. While I was filming reactions from the EPA and from the Navajo tribe and from reporters and from activists, all of whom saw that film and wanted to know more, this is a catalyzing effect. And if I filmed catalyzing effects, I might actually be able to catch results. Eventually in 2011, the feds came back to actually clean up the abandoned uranium mine in Elsie's backyard. Elsie Begay, the main character in the film. So I was on time, and I was able to help provoke that and then chronicle it.
Speaking of the uranium mines, obviously with last year more mining companies even opening up 10 more uranium mines. How has this film kind of resurged in environmental relevance in terms of fighting against these uranium mines?
I think that the film is very clearly a cautionary tale, and it's told from the point of view of people involved in the uranium mining from the 40s up to present. And because it's from the point of view of Navajos living in Monument Valley, where John Ford and John Wayne put the West, we have an iconic location for this long-term family experience. So it's not theory, and it isn't like a reporter coming in and doing a report about a family. It's a family telling its own story over generations, in its own words and from their own community. So people are seeing over time that these things that are popular terms like environmental justice or environmental injustice or contamination or radioactive and toxic waste, they actually are real things that real families deal with. But if you do a survey and you, let's say, use statistics, you get one type of communication. When you use story, and first-person story at that, an indigenous family's own telling and participation in the filming, you get a completely different experience. And we want to give that experience to viewers today who are used to short content that is somewhat untrustworthy and may seem like it's just one person's opinion from somewhere far away. So we have an authentic and ongoing story. It stays relevant because people are dealing with these things.
It's something that I've heard of for a long time, and now seeing the film for the first time too, getting to see those stories was something that really made me feel just frustrated for the people living there and everything. And that kind of takes me back to the film and a specific question I had about the film, actually. John, the main character, and the Navajo boy who was able to be returned to his family, he mentions in the show, after discovering all of this, that he is angry about the situation. And I found that line particularly interesting because it's one of the only instances in the film that we hear about anger as an emotion or a feeling with all these people and their family. And why did you make that choice to include that as like the only line of anger that we get in the movie?
I was an English major. I'm really touched that you realize this. I learned that authenticity matters most in documentary. And I learned that you can use a kind of negative space to get a really strong reaction from people. And so the thing that is absent from this family's way of telling its story is anger. For the most part, they are not activists. They didn't intend to be activists when we started making the film. The fact that John was taken away from his family left him with a huge question mark in his life. And maybe there wasn't really any real need for him to be kept away from his family. He would like to have gone back, he says in the film, but people kept him from speaking his language and didn't want him to know about his past. And he was angry because he saw that even John Wayne, the actor, had written a letter wishing him well and hoping that some small contribution might help his life. So John's anger is subdued. He mentions it, but it's in keeping with the whole family's grace and ability to accept the hand that life had dealt them. Most of us would be angry as hell. I was angry, but I stayed focused on the people in the film and their story, and how they told their story mattered as much as what they told.
I spoke with documentary director Jeff Spitz. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Sarah Ariano.
The Return of Navajo Boy is screening on Sunday, February 15th at 1 p.m. at the U of A's ENR2 building. It's followed by an open discussion with the film's participants. We have a link on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. This month, Tucson is inviting everyone to the world's largest gathering of gems, minerals, fossils, and other curiosities. The annual events are actually a combination of separate shows happening throughout the city. It all began decades ago with the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, now a registered trademark of the Tucson Gem and Mineral Society. Next, Tony Paniagua interviews two board members from that nonprofit group, which is celebrating its 71st annual event this month.
Dr. Peter McCall and Michael Hollenbeck, thank you very much for joining us.
A pleasure, Tony.
Thank you.
Dr. Peter McCall, you told me not to call you a doctor except for once or twice. You're not a medical doctor. Tell us about yourself,
No,
please.
I'm a rock doctor. I'm a PhD geologist, graduated from the U of A, moved here because of the Gem and Mineral Show back in 1979.
And you have been involved in the Tucson Gem and Mineral Society for several decades. Can you tell us about that inspiration? Why have you been doing it for so long?
A friend of mine invited me to join him at the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show in 1977. I had absolutely no idea what that was. I fell madly in love with mineral specimens. 2 years later, when I graduated with my master's, I had a choice between working in Denver or working in Tucson. I got to work in Tucson in gold and silver exploration, and the world's biggest and best mineral show came to me once a year. It was a very easy decision.
And Michael Hollenbeck, you were born in Tucson, but you
Yes.
were not really aiming to become part of this organization as you were growing up. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, I was just, I'm a Tucson native, and I used to just love hiking and seeing shiny rocks and stuff in the mountains. And then I met Peter here remodeling his house, and I fell in love with crystals by stuff that he had, and he showed me, gave me some tickets. I went to the show for the first time, and I was just in awe. You know, it truthfully is a miracle of God on how these things are created. I mean, you know, it's the earth and water and wind and rain and everything, and then there's, you know, these minerals just form underneath us, and until you see them, it's unbelievable to know that they come out of the earth.
Peter, so what is the Tucson Gem and Mineral Society all about?
The Tucson Gem and Mineral Society is all about encouraging and educating people on minerals, fossils, earth science in general, enjoy the science and the realities of this world, as Mike was explaining. I mean, minerals are the basis of life, and they're heavily the basis of the economy in Arizona. So it's all something that just makes sense for Arizona. There's about 7,000 different mineral species known. That's in comparison to millions of species of various critters and things that have been described, although a large portion of those are microscopic. And about 1,000 of those 7,000 known species are present here in Arizona, many of the prettier ones, which is nice. And probably 150 or so were originally described from here in Arizona, primarily by scientists at the University of Arizona.
Michael, and you say you started collecting. Tell us about that collection, please.
So I usually tell people that begin, what's your favorite color? And, you know, for me, it was blue. And at the time, just across the Nogales border, there was a big mine in Mexico that had produced a very well-known copper mineral called azurite, and they were the world's best. And Peter had some of them, and I was just like, wow. I don't have a PhD in any of this stuff. I didn't know a single thing. I asked Peter, how do I learn more? Well, the first thing you do, you go down and join the Tucson Gem and Mineral Society and surround yourself with people who do know. And then you just start learning, pick up a book, you know, Google something. And it's real simple. It's a wonderful hobby. It really is.
You got very inspired because from not knowing about the organization, next thing you know, you're president. Can you explain that process?
Volunteering to do something that you love is really easy to do. And that's the one thing about the Tucson Gem and Mineral Society is that it's all volunteer based. And so you really just have to have a passion and be willing to do it. And so it was really easy to kind of step into the role. Learning what the role was another thing, but it's pretty simple.
Peter, Michael mentions the importance of having that passion. Obviously, you still carry it with you after all these years. What is it about rocks and minerals and gems that keeps you going?
I'm a geologist, so that's my vocation. Mineralogy is my avocation. I'm very lucky that the two cross paths in all kinds of exciting ways. My minor in the doctoral program was mineralogy, so I studied the structure of minerals all the way down to the atomic level and things like that. And that's all very exciting and interesting. It's not what you see necessarily when you look at them, although the shapes of minerals are something that the Greeks figured out about 2,500, 3,000 years ago, that there's only so many ways you can fill three-dimensional space with repetition of geometric shapes. And there's only 12 options. They had it all figured out mathematically before folks invented X-rays and discovered that actually the atoms follow those rules too. So I'm fascinated from that level all the way to the big, beautiful crystals in my collection or in the two spectacular public collections that exist in the Tucson area, one at the Desert Museum and the other at the Alfie Norval Museum in the Old County Courthouse downtown, which just opened a few years ago and just has a spectacular exhibit.
Dr. Peter McGaw and Michael Hollenbeck, both board members of the Tucson Gem and Mineral Society. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a real pleasure, Tony.
Thank you.
Many of the annual events are already underway, but the Tucson Gem and Minerals Show is from Thursday, February 12th until Sunday the 15th at the Tucson Convention Center. This year's theme, in honor of the founding of the United States 250 years ago, is Red, White, and Blue. Celebrate the spirit of minerals. The songs of composer and pianist Thomas Fats Waller are as boisterous and joyful as the man himself. They've definitely stood the test of time. Some are just a few years short of being 100 years old. The current production by the Arizona Theater Company, Ain't Misbehavin', is a musical review based on the Fats Waller songbook. Joining me now are director and choreographer Del Howlett and music director Abdul Hamid Royal to tell us more. Abdul Hamid begins.
Well, I mean, he's one of the templates, right, for a pianist, anybody who wants to engage American classical music, which other people call jazz. I mean, he demands a serious engagement of melody, harmony, rhythm, technique, and all of those things are sort of building blocks. They are not the thing itself, and he uses those in very creative and artistic ways. I think people often think that genius sort of comes to the planet without growth and without effort. And yet somehow Fats was able to bring what he was born with and to absorb sound, feeling, history, culture around him and translate it for us in a way that many people thought was just popular music. But on closer inspection, you found there was genius.
And Del, what's a way that you have drawn inspiration from Fats over the years?
Yeah, I have to underscore what Abdul Hamid said about the idea of genius. One of the things that I've always known about Fats is that it is a studied talent. When you read Maurice Waller, his son's book, he talks a great deal about Fats as organist. And Fats, when he used to sneak into the church and would really practice on the organ, right? Really fill the space with that. And so he was a very serious technical artist as well. And so, I think that's my biggest takeaway is what Abdul Hamid was saying, which is genius looks like it's something unstudied, that there aren't hours and hours and hours of practice underneath it. But Fats Waller really is an artist who demonstrated that idea that you can love it, but your dedication to scales, your dedication to the practicing of it is also really important. I think the other thing is that he was a writer. He wrote this music, he composed this music, and hundreds of compositions. And so, I really take that away just as something really extraordinary about him that I continue to come back to as an artist who is generative myself and who is making things and who makes things, I hope, thoughtfully. I really look to that example.
But do you own a pair of spats?
I could never wear spats as elegantly as Fats.
Do you have a special approach or a special need when it comes to taking contemporary performers and then asking them to fit into the sort of idiom from almost 100 years ago?
For sure. I mean, I think in particular with a Misbehavin, because so much of the work that Fats was doing was really pointing to Black life during the Harlem Renaissance and during the 20s, 30s, and 40s in New York City, and of course just Black life in America. And so to be looking at that in 2026, right? So much of our country has shifted and changed. There have been so many new questions and new ways to understand Black life and Black experience. We're living in a post-Wakanda world, right? And so to approach Fats Waller's music and to have an understanding that we have explored some elements of what's in the music, but there might be other elements that have gone unexcavated within the work. We are really trying to make sure that we ask those questions with this production. Something like a number like Black and Blue that is really gorgeously rendered, but that really speaks to a really particular experience within Black identity in America. It's something that I think we're looking at in a different way within this piece. And there are a couple of other numbers within the piece that we're looking at through some different perspectives to bring more of a more humanity, more full humanity to how we represent Fats within the show. So there are just a couple places where we are trying to make sure that Fats Waller, the man, the person, doesn't come off as one-dimensional.
Do either of you think that the success this year of the movie Sinners has helped to raise the profile of a production like A Misbehavin? Do you think people now might be more interested in getting into contact with the 20s and 30s and Black American life because of the immense popularity of this film?
I think that could be true, for sure. I know that I am certainly a fan of Ryan Coogler and his entire oeuvre. And I was certainly compelled and inspired by Sinners. I'm also a person who was also already very much inspired by Waller and that whole world. But yeah, I think that could be a welcomed side effect of the Sinners effect. That people are more available to it.
For some young people.
Yeah, for some people who haven't, who may not have any relationship to blues and who may not have any relationship to Black American music. That may be a rich entryway for them, and it's a great movie.
And Abdul Hamid, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what people are discovering has been hidden in plain sight for a few hundred years. And I think that whatever gets you there, I mean, one doesn't judge the process of another person. So if young people are more interested in blues or interested in discovering the time period because of a contemporary movie, I have a couple friends in the movie and I support it 100%. If that is how they get here, it doesn't matter when they get here, do you know what I mean? Or how they get here. I think that anyone that discovers American classical music and engages it in a certain kind of way, even on a cursory level, enriches their own life. And for those of us who've loved Fats Waller and those of us who have been inspired by him and this genre of music for years, the depth of that appreciation just grows with each opportunity to engage the music.
As Dizzy Gillespie once said, the kingdom of music is always accepting new citizens. My guests were Del Howlett and Abdul Hamid Royal. Arizona Theater Company presents Ain't Misbehavin' through February 14th at the Temple of Music and Art. Then the show moves to Tempe for shows from February 21st through March 8th. Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM and is posted weekly at azpm.org. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. Production assistance by Sarah Arellano. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
This has been an original production of AZPM News.